right, so there we go. So hello, welcome to the Contra Costa College Workforce Wednesday Administration of Justice panel. I'm Mariah Bruce, and today I have the pleasure of introducing Julie Scholar. Julie has been serving as a counselor at Contra Costa College since 2012. She completed her bachelor's degree in Spanish at Simmons College before going on to her Master's of Education from Lesley University, followed by her Master's in Counseling from St. Mary's College of California. She studied early childhood education and college counseling and is passionate about helping people in the field of education and helping students develop one's strengths, believing in themselves, growing more comfortable and confident, and envisioning possibilities and access resources. Julie's excited to join us today as the facilitator of our program. Give Julie a hand.
All right. So I just want to say welcome. I'm really happy to be here, and thank you for joining us in person and virtually. We're really excited to help you learn about career options in administration and justice and how Contra Costa College programs can help you to achieve your goals. I know many of you have questions or will have questions about this field, so I'll start with some basics before we get into the panel discussion. So public safety related occupations are projected to grow 4.2% in Contra Costa County from 2022 to 2028. Median wages in public safety positions in the Bay Area is over $115,472 per year. Some administration of justice certificates of achievement can be earned with as little as 18 credits at Contra Costa College. So we've got an exciting session planned for you today, and we look forward to helping you learn about the career options and exploring if this is a pathway to your goals. So I just want to remind folks before we start and to ask all virtual participants to mute their audio, and folks in here, if you don't mind muting your phone. If virtual folks have questions, please enter them into the chat and we'll be able to address them during the Q&A portion of the session. Okay, so what we're going to be doing today is we are going to I'm going to introduce the panel members, facilitate questions for the panelists. The panelists are going to then give closing remarks. We're going to have a question and answer period for the audience. And then after that, there's going to be a resume workshop and closing. Help yourself to food back there. So I'm going to introduce the three panelists that we have here. On my far left is Israel Carrero, and I'm going to give them a minute each to introduce themselves. He's a probation manager at Contra Costa County Probation Department. Pamela Harrison, over here to my left, is CCC and DBC faculty and retired deputy chief in the County of Alameda Probation Department. And then in the middle is Joel Enriquez, police lieutenant and Bay Area Rapid Transit B.A.R.T Police Department. So let's start with Pamela, if you want to take a moment to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Bruce, for inviting me. I see the chair for our department, who is a retired captain with San Francisco Police Department, John Sanford, and I'm glad to see all of you. So I'm going to stand up because I know that I'm very tall, and some of you will not see me otherwise. So I just wanted to share with you, this is excellent for you to have time and interest. And so as you'll hear from all of us, this is a fabulous career. It is absolutely one I have been blessed to be a part of, and I want to encourage you to consider all the aspects. There's so many aspects. I have a career that I still am benefiting from, and not just because I'm retired, but because I love the work, and most of all, I love serving the people. So with that, I will sit down, and you can ask any questions as Ms. Julie gives us direction. Thank you.
Thanks, Pamela. Now I'd like to ask Joel.
Yeah.
Joel Enriquez, right here, is going to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. I'm not going to stand up. It was very hard for me to sit down because I've got a full kit on, so that'll be entertaining to stand up and sit down in front of you all. But thank you for having me. I'm a local. I grew up down the street. I used to swim at the swimming pool over here when it was 50 cents with my friends in the summertime. I graduated from Pinole, and I came here to Contra Costa, and really just, this is where it all began. In administration of justice, this is where the spark grew into a flame, and here I am, you know, years later as a police lieutenant. And so as you guys, hopefully you guys get the sense that you could ask me any question about the industry, about the job, and I will give you a very transparent answer as to how I feel. But just know that I remember being in your position, and it was cool to have somebody on this side of the table invest their time into me. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Joel. Thanks for that. Israel Carrero.
First off, I just want to say thank you to Julie, to Miss Mariah, to Contra Costa College, and for you guys being here today. I'm honored to be a part of this panel, this Q&A discussion. Like my cohorts to my right, I started off, you know, as a young person looking to maybe get into the career, going through the junior community college system. Along the way, eventually I attained my AA degree and moved on to attain my bachelor's degree. Currently, I am a probation manager overseeing personnel matters for Contra Costa County Probation. At this time, we have about 380 sworn and non-sworn officers for our department. We look to continue to grow. We are offering positions at various levels throughout the department. And basically, I'm here to support you guys to the best of my ability, answering any all questions you guys might have. I'm willing to stay beyond the time limit if you guys want to meet with me outside at some point. If you have further discussions or questions, I am going to make myself readily available for every one of you guys. I will stay here as long as I have to.
Thank you. You folks are very generous in offering your time, and I appreciate the introductions. So we're now going to move into the questions that we've prepared for you. Israel, why did you decide to work in an administration of justice-related field?
Honestly, I sort of fell into it. My best friend was a criminal justice major. And at the time, it was my first or second year at Automotive College down in Southern Fremont, I was actually looking to get into broadcasting. I wanted to be a DJ. My hair was a little bit higher, my hair was a little bit longer, maybe definitely a lot more black than it is now. And I was working part-time for a security company. And I had an epiphany around Christmas time. I was doing security at a outside shopping center, and I was angry because I was working Christmas morning. It was cold, I'm by myself, so I'm pretty much, you know, in a foul mood. I'm being a little salty, feeling it. And next thing I know, I see this little 5-year-old girl in this little beautiful Christmas dress, and she's riding her little bicycle with training wheels. Now, the outside mall had rules that indicated you could not ride your bicycle or your skateboard, whatever the case may be, along the sidewalk. So I was in a position where I could enforce the rules, and I said, you know, you can't ride your bike here. Well, unfortunately, she's about 5 or so, and she starts tearing up before me. Her eyes start getting moist and watery, but she says, but Santa said I could ride it. So at that moment, I had an epiphany. It's like, you know what? It's okay to work in the spirit of the law. My role is not necessarily just to simply just enforce, but to work with people, if that makes any sense. And so at that point, I gave in and I said, you can ride your bike. Now, but at that moment, my focus went from trying to simply enforce the rules to where are her parents? Now, there's only maybe 1 or 2 stores that were open. I didn't see her parents around, so my focus then became to look after this young lady, this young girl. And this was around the time of the late 80s when there was a few high-profile kidnapping cases in the Bay Area. One of which I believe was Michaela Garrett, and she was kidnapped about 1.5 miles away from where I was doing security at the time. So at that point, my focus became just to sort of look after that young lady. And eventually the parents came out. But again, it was moments like that, along with starting to take criminal justice classes with my best friend. And along the way, I started getting into other programs like Big Brothers organizations and working part-time for a private juvenile diversion program and such. And I found out I liked working with young people. I liked working with people. I think that, regardless of whatever discipline we come from in terms of law enforcement, I think it's incumbent that we never lose focus of the idea that we are here to serve the public. We are here to work for people.
Thank you, Israel. That's very touching. Joel, can you tell us what a typical day at work is like for you?
Yeah, so as a lieutenant, a lieutenant is essentially a manager of an area of responsibility within the agency. So as a lieutenant, this is my day. Say my prayers, get my cup of coffee, check my emails, and then I prioritize my projects. That's usually the first thing I do. After I do that, I get with my team, I brief them, and we get our day going. Check in with them throughout the day, and then we handle problems as they come about. Where it differs from patrol is it's essentially the same thing, except when you're in patrol, and I'll answer this as a patrol officer or a patrol sergeant, all of that stuff is still the same, but now we're handling patrol-related problems, calls for service, maybe handling fights or whatever it is. And then when we're not handling calls for service, we're highly visible, trying to provide a presence for the public so that people will feel safe inside the community. After that, we have to prepare reports and documentation for the things that we've done. And as a lieutenant, and as a friend or a sergeant or anybody, we need to check on each other still. Hey, how's your day going, partner? See if anybody needs help, if there's any holes in our operation. As much as possible, I try to get push-ups in every day throughout my shift. I try to get up out of my chair as a lieutenant. I sit a lot, so I try to get up out of my chair and put some steps in. Check out with my team, and then I go off duty. From there, go home and do the same thing. I check in with my family and handle that business as well. After that, a couple times a week, I actually teach jiu-jitsu within this community right here in El Sobrani. So that's like a side passion that I have as well. So I do that, and I teach a lot of students and a lot of adults as well. So that's a typical day for me.
Thanks, Joel. That was nice to hear. Pamela, what are the best and the most challenging parts of your position?
One of the best is I always wanted to be a deputy probation officer. So it was not hard for me. I met and had the opportunity to know a few people, both in my family and outside the family, that were working in this capacity. I'm a local girl, so I'm from Oakland, grew up in Oakland, attended Oakland schools. I went to Cal State Hayward before it was East Bay, and then graduated from Berkeley in the then criminology department. So I was really well-rounded for working for the County of Alameda because it's home. And that was one of the best parts. I could serve communities of people I wasn't afraid of, and I didn't feel needed to be afraid of me. Additionally, I'll tell you this, and I am going to stand up again. Organizational skills, if you're really organized as a student, as an individual, if you like learning, these are the best parts of this field, in my opinion, because we're always learning. You will not get stagnant. You will not find yourself falling behind. You're introduced to more law than you ever thought you want to know about, and more penal codes and vehicle codes and welfare institution codes, but it serves you in the long run. One of the best parts, again, is that you're introduced to all the new technology for free. You learn a lot, and you're challenged to know a lot. One of the challenges you will encounter is that you're expected to uphold a professional standard at all times. So we're really never off duty, even when we're off duty. We're aware of certain things that the average person may not be. And we try to make sure that we still perform to that capacity. You represent a department as well as my two colleagues here and a larger body and scope of professionals. You have excellent benefits, and not just the ones for your medical and your dental and your retirement. You have the benefit of professionals around you who will work with you and help you. Those were the best and at the same time most challenging items. Just a few. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Israel, what advice would you give to, What advice would you give to someone just starting out or someone who wants to make their career in probation?
I would say professionally, there's different areas within the department. Typically, one starts off in the institutions, although one can also start off in the field. There's various offices and areas that probation works with. But I would say in terms of, from a professional standpoint, it's important, it's incumbent that you develop a toolbox of strategies in terms of how you deal with people. Our department looks at working with individuals, and that's what they are, individuals, all backgrounds, diversity, and so forth. We encourage our staff to be pragmatic and listen to those who know and work within the realm of policy procedure and utilizing the various strategies and techniques that come your way. In addition to that, as I mentioned, we have different areas within our department. So, I think it behooves one to get experiences in the various different parts of the department. So you have a well-balanced approach, you have a global-like vision in terms of what takes place within probation, also working with the courts and so forth. And then from a personal standpoint, I think Lieutenant Enrique has kind of alluded to it, and that is self-care. I think self-care is incumbent for officers regardless of discipline. And so whether it's doing jujitsu or going to classes for whatever it is that you're interested in, those sort of things, I highly encourage people to do, because otherwise, oftentimes we become fixated with our jobs, and that's not always a good thing. There should be a balanced approach to one's life.
Thank you. Joel, can you tell us about your educational and career pathway? What degrees and certifications were required as you progressed?
So I started my career out at the Contra Costa Sheriff's Office in 1999. At the time, they didn't require anything but a high school diploma. That agency was the first agency that would swear me in because I wasn't 21 yet. So that's why I went there, and I wanted to stay local. At B.A.R.T, we required, at the time I went over to B.A.R.T in 2002, 40 units. So in the police academy, you get 20, and then I had 20 units from here. So that satisfied that requirement. From there, I took a lot of fun courses throughout my career. Depending on what special assignment I had earned or acquired, when I was on the SWAT team, I got to go to SWAT school, hostage rescue type schools, a lot of fun stuff. as I became an instructor at multiple disciplines. I went to instructor schools, firearms instructor school, defensive tactics instructor school, all kinds of really fun certifications. When I became an investigator, I got to go to homicide investigation and various investigative schools. And then eventually when I started to take on a leadership role, I went to leadership schools, supervisor school, manager schools, etc. At my agency, they give us incentives as well as they give us a reimbursement for education. So I use that reimbursement to pay for my college degrees. I earned a Bachelor's of Science in Criminal Justice Management, and I earned a Master's in Criminal Justice, all from the incentives, or all from the reimbursement, and therefore got me incentives at work. So in addition to that, it helped also with the promotional process. It allows you to become a more polished candidate for whatever position you're putting in for. So if you wanted to go up the ranks and take on leadership roles, these degrees will definitely help you get those positions.
Thank you. Well, okay, Israel, if you could do anything if you could do anything over on your journey, what would it be?
That's a tough question. I would say I would go and try to attain my bachelor's degree much sooner, because by doing so, you create more opportunities for yourself professionally. The other piece is I'd probably take more writing courses along the way. I think the better a writer one is, the more opportunities you'll have for yourself in terms of promotions and other things along the way.
Thank you. Pamela, can you also answer that question? If you could do anything over on your journey, what would it be?
I think for me, it would be becoming fluent in another language. We are in the Bay Area, and I'm not going to speak for my colleagues. They are strong professionals, but I think they would agree with me. We need to be multilingual in this field. We serve a lot of people. And in Alameda County, for instance, before I retired, some of my deputies, as well as some of the support staff, were very fluent. Anything from Mandarin to Farsi to Tagalog, beyond Spanish, Cantonese. We had a variety of languages. We pay you good money for being fluent in another language. So perfect that. Don't be afraid to use that as one of your skills, and we're looking for you. We need you. So I would say for me, I'm growing up here, and my Spanish is poquito. So there's no reason I'm not fluent at this stage of I can drive to Mexico and become fluent. So I want to encourage that, because that would be the area I'm most, and like Israel said, your writing skills make all the difference in the world. And I'm speaking from what you write on your application to what you are trained and taught to write for your departments.
Thank you. Israel, I have another question for you. What was something that surprised you about your journey to becoming a probation manager?
So becoming a probation manager for the department, I was a IS2, institutional supervisor level 2, and institutional level supervisor level 1. And I would say the one thing that wasn't on the job description when I first became a supervisor, now a manager, is that you wear far more hats than what's noted on the application. And one of which is you sort of become a de facto therapist, de facto coach, not just for the clientele, but for your own personnel. And it's not just dealing with professional matters, it's personal matters. So one of the areas that I cover is having to deal with matters of FMLA, SEFRA, ADA matters, leave of absence issues altogether, opportunities, or not opportunities, rather LOA matters that come up. And what I've realized more and more is that we all have something going on in our lives, and our job is to put people in a position for success. And how we can do that is to support them by giving them the tools and things that can help them in their position. Even if something as simple as, I remember early on in my career as a supervisor, I saw someone using their cell phone. And it wasn't like that person just to use a cell phone flippantly on a unit when he was supposed to be supervising the group. Well, I think the first thing that I was told was, you have to call out somebody. When you see that sort of thing, my first instinct was, pulled them aside. My first thing is, were you okay? Is everything okay at home? You don't need to tell me your specifics, but is there something going on that you need to pull away from the unit, make a personal call, and I can either support you by being here while you're making that call, or whatever the case may be. And he indicated that there was something going on at home, and so again, and then of course later on he came to me and he obviously divulged some things in private. And again, I think you wear a lot of different hats because, again, a lot of things happen outside of work as much as, on the clock. And working in, whether it be probation or B.A.R.T police, whatever the case may be, there's a lot of moving parts. And it is incumbent that, as a supervisor, in this case now a manager, that we use every tool that we have to work with people. And of course, never forget that, everyone is an individual.
Thanks, Israel. Joel, did you have a mentor that helped you to get you where you are?
This is a fun question because when I think of my experience, I'll answer it with here at Contra Costa College. When I was sitting as a student in administration of justice classes, I shared this with Julie and Mariah, that I was just taking general ed, and then just by happenstance, I don't think it was happenstance, I think it was ordained, I took an administration of justice class, and I shared with them the reason why. Can you share with them why, Mariah?
He wanted to learn how to get out of
That was my intention. Sitting on that side of the room, that was my intention for taking administration of justice classes. But as I listened to Sergeant Rick Ramos, retired, tell stories about his adventures in Berkeley PD, and I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, how exciting is this career? And then I started to figure out, oh my goodness, I could do this in a few years. I was 18 and a half at the time. That's when I cleaned up my act, focused on a career in law enforcement, continued to take college. A buddy of mine said, hey, bro, let's go to the academy together. I'm like, I'm not even 21 yet. He goes, let's go. If we stick together, we could get through it together. We went, we graduated, we both got jobs. He recently retired, and here I am, a lieutenant of a local agency. So, those two right there, not mentored, like carried me through, but I attribute a lot of it where I'm at today with those guys. And throughout my career, there have been informal mentors, people who have taken me and said, hey, straighten that up, or hey, that wasn't cool, type of thing. And I appreciate their honesty, sometimes brutally honest. And then I was like, yeah, you know what? You're right, I did that wrong. Let me improve. And so throughout my career, I had various people be upfront. And you need people that are honest with you, even brutally honest. And then with that, as people invest in you, you ought to invest in other people as well. Because now you're gaining all this experience, right, that they haven't gotten yet. So now you pour yourself into them. And that's really the formula to a healthy organization, right, is when you have people alongside of you, you have people teaching you, and you teach others. You get that thing going, there's no stopping the organization.
Thank you, Joel. Pamela, what kind of work would a student completing an administration of justice program at CCC be prepared to do?
Well, if you're completing a certificate and/or a degree and you're under 21, you cannot work for any of the 58 probation departments in the state. You must be 21. Lieutenant's told you he had a divine situation there, being under 21. Now, that's not a negative because you're a sworn peace officer, excuse me, for the state of California. So there's a belief, and I would agree with it, that the level of maturity we're looking for you to have at that stage is because you are considered an adult. And then there's another part to it, and I believe the lieutenant touched on it. Today, we arm our deputies in almost all of our counties, practically. So it's a very different introduction to the work from when I started. But the jobs are never just limited. So you can become a dispatcher, a probation aide, a deputy probation officer, obviously. You could work as a court liaison. You could become our fiscal and management analyst. You can become a community-based organization counselor, working as one of our partners for both our young people and our adults. You can also work for the forestry department, for fish and game. There are so many elements to the field, the professional field, that are not highlighted or not necessarily on your top radar because people don't talk about them or offer them to you. And so we share, at least here at Contra Costa College and Diablo Valley College, that we want you to be open to a lot of opportunities locally, on the state level, and on the national level. And most of all, we're looking for you to bring your skills, your talent, and your interests. You've got to love people if you're in this field. Now, if they're not your favorite, I suggest you consider another career. Thank you.
Thanks, Pamela. Israel, what would be the next steps for advancement once working in the field?
So typically, everyone who comes into our department starts off as a juvenile institution officer. And there used to be two facilities for our county. It's down to one now. The Boys Ranch closed about 3-4 months ago. And so now it's the juvenile hall located in Martinez. There's various units in juvenile hall, ranging from the girls unit, which focuses primarily on treatment. Now we have individuals that are Division of Juvenile Justice type of youth that are in our facility. And of course, we have others that are in detention facilities or units, excuse me. And in terms of advancement, it does require a bachelor's degree, whether it's to become a deputy probation officer, an institutional supervisor, or a probation supervisor. So, as I mentioned earlier, when I think Ms. Julie asked the question, what would I change differently about my journey? Well, when I first started in the probation department, I started when I was a little bit older it's no longer, the series no longer exists. It was called a probation counselor. And they kind of changed the name to juvenile institution officer. For about the first 4 years in the department, I had my AA degree, so it opened the door for me. However, in terms of promoting, I did go back to school and I attained my bachelor's degree. So first and foremost, you have to have your bachelor's degree if you so choose to go into probation, and later on, if you decide you want to at least try to promote.
Thank you. This is a question for all of you. So is there a way to fast track career progression?
I'll answer that first.
Okay.
So I have a different philosophy in regards to career progression. And when you hear the term career progression, it sounds like climbing the ranks really fast. And so I remember a young sergeant, newly promoted, talking to me. We were in the field, and he immediately told me that he wanted to be a lieutenant, and he's gonna, as soon as he gets out, he's gonna do this stuff, right? And so I did one of these things. I said, pump your brakes, pump your brakes. And this is why. For me, and this is my philosophy, in order to do it right, because when you climb the ranks and take on roles as a leader, it is important to have credibility. And in order to have credibility, you have to have time in the job to do it. You have to do the job well. My opinion is that you start teaching. That's how you develop your credibility. Once you have that, you learn that next role, and you learn it enough that you could potentially do it. Once you're a teacher of something, or once you have a specialty and you could start teaching something, then you start thinking about the next part. From there, if you could do the next, you start taking on roles that are above your rank, taking on responsibilities that are above your rank, take advantage of opportunities where they delegate authority to you. So if they say, hey, I'm out of town, you have the keys, don't mess up the shop. And if you do, and if you run with it and you do a good job, and you don't just sit on it, and you actually do stuff, make it better for the organization, for the community, then you're ready to promote. And all of that is to say, fast tracking or career progression, I would say take your time. You want to develop the credibility so that when you get into the position of leadership, as you command, you'll have that credibility, and they'll be more apt to listen to you. I remember going into a dangerous situation, and I didn't expect people to go with me. And I looked behind me, and they all had my back. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, but if you didn't have that credibility, then they would not have been wrong not to go with me, but they all went with me. So.
Thanks, Joel. Joel, we have 2 minutes left, and so if you, Pamela and Israel, each want to take a minute to also answer this question, if there's a way to fast track career progression in your opinion, which one of you would like to go first?
I will go next. Thank you. I'm going to go back to that last statement I made about liking people. If you like people, it must include not only your coworker and the people who are your administrators who are responsible for you. It means liking the people you serve, because this is every day. And this isn't a career that you're gonna see featured on reality TV. And even what is on there regarding courts and all, courts don't operate like that, just as the police department doesn't operate quite the way they depict it, and certainly not probation. But I think the fast track is becoming aware of where your strengths lie, your gifts and talents. Are you more inclined to work with young people than adults? And if so, can you withstand that you're only going to meet them in the middle? So the fast track progression, I agree with everything the lieutenant shared, is that you have strong time management skills, that you actually know the mission of your department and where the department wants to go. And you're the asset that helps the department reach that goal. So we need you to be really prepared to come into the field and grow. And you're going to stand out in terms of progression, because we're always, if we were 3 supervisors and administrators working together, we're telling one another that Julie's someone we want to keep our eye on. She has certain capabilities. She possesses certain skills. So there's a reason we talk to you in the terms of what you need to bring, but be prepared that this is work you enjoy and want to do. You won't get off at 5 o'clock every day, I can tell you that. And you won't be able to tell everyone what you do or what the day was like in terms of confidentiality. But there's a lot to this that will progress you, as it was said so well, and you'll be ready for the next step. You'll even know where you want to go.
Thanks, Pamela. Israel?
I completely agree with my esteemed colleagues over here. Everything they said is absolutely on point. I do think it behooves one to know and understand the vision of the department and of your chief. I think it behooves you to take advantage of professional development opportunities when they come. And then you must, especially here being the Bay Area, you have to value diversity.
Thanks, Israel. So in a 1-minute closing remark, can each one of you just tell us about like one tip or trick that really helped you get started on the right foot? Or if you struggled initially, how did you turn it around? And any other final thought? All that in just 1 minute per person. Who would like to start?
I'll go. Okay, so tip. All right, being in that seat, being mesmerized by this exciting career, being mesmerized in the fact that I get to help people and not anymore live for myself as a local boy, right? Just a kid from Pinole or San Pablo, but I went to Pinole because they don't want me to go to Richmond, right? Being on that seat, changing my mind, I stayed focused on what I had to do, right? Cleaned up my act, took the classes I needed to take. Initially, my family didn't support me. I was like, he can't be a cop, he's too small, right? But I stayed with it. I stayed with it. I had my honest friends with me. We encouraged each other along the way. And before you knew it, the academy just came and went. So just stay focused on it. Stay focused on the goals that you have. And like my colleague over here said, understand your strengths. Understand your strengths, right? If something is not for you, and that's okay. It might be for your own safety, right? But if it's for you, if it's exciting, stay focused. Get the classes that you need done. Seek the career field that you want, and ask people that you trust, and have people that are involved in your life that will be honest with you as well.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Israel, can you remember the question?
Yes, so I would say just lastly, I just want to say first and foremost, thank you again for having me on this panel. I really appreciate the opportunity. I would say, looking back when I first started, it's important that you remain fair, firm, consistent when you're working with people. It's important that you don't personalize things when things come your way. You'll be insulted like you've never been insulted before, and there's been instances where I've thought, you know what, that was so good, and I'm not even offended. I'm impressed by how I've been chewed out. But even then, once you become emotionally involved, you have to remember, the best of your ability, try to disengage. And I've often joked with my officers when I've told them, your ego is not your amigo. There is some truth to that. Your ego is not your amigo.
Not your friend.
Yeah. But when it comes to the whole process, as Lieutenant alluded to, remain steadfast. You may not get the position the first time around, and that's okay. And you'll be discouraged because there are different steps that you have to go through to get to the position that you want. You have to take the written examination, the oral examination, the personal history statement. You want to make sure you have your minimum qualifications in place. There's a medical examination. There's a urinalysis, psychological profile. And for some departments, they do require a polygraph. So along the way, you may encounter maybe some stumbling blocks, but that's okay. Don't get discouraged. It's very rare that you see one candidate that goes through the entire process the first time out and secures a position with whatever the department is or discipline is. So just keep that in mind. But as Lieutenant kind of alluded to, find a peer, find a mentor so he or she can help coach you along the way and keep you on the right path. And those are the things that I would say are the biggest takeaways in terms of moving into this sort of career.
Thank you. Pamela, you have a tip?
I want to just encourage each of you to determine if you find that this is not the work for you, that's okay. You just heard it's going to take layers and layers, and it takes time. My county was, a few years back, it was taking in excess of 18 months to get you from initial application through the entire process and ready for us to offer you employment. In 18 months, you may have applied to 2 or 3 other places, and that's fine. But be mindful that all of us talk to one another. So the background investigator for probation, as well as police, they're a tight-knit group, and they're gonna know. I'd like to share one tip that I think will help each of you, and I share it with my students that I teach. If you are a social media platform star, retire.
Thank you.
Retire.
Great.
Look at everything, everything, clean it up. The tats and all the things and all your gang sign, everything, clean it up. Thank you.
Stop posting. Yeah.
Stop posting and stop letting other people post about what you do.
About you. Yeah. Thanks. Wonderful. That was really informative. Right now we have about 8 minutes for audience Q&A. That would be you and also the people that are participating virtually. So please raise your hand to ask questions, or if you're here virtually, place your question in the chat. And I just want to remind you, since there's so little time, give everybody an opportunity to talk, that please limit your question to 1 and try to keep it short. Get right to the question, okay? Yes. I can't actually hear you. So
What was the hardest part of going to your career?
I'm sorry,
what was the hardest part of getting into your career? Is that right?
Yes.
of getting in?
Yeah.
I started applying at 20, so they couldn't, a lot of agencies didn't touch me. And I had to wait till I was 20 and a half when Contra Costa started my process. And I was in the process, and this is what's gonna happen right now with the number of vacancies throughout the entire industry. Everyone's hiring, everyone's looking. Okay, so when I turned 20 and a half, Contra Costa started the process, and they swore me in before my 21st birthday. But, you know, a lot of that was waiting. Right now is a really good time to get into this industry.
Perfect.
And I would say, and I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
And I would say to that point, it used to be a process where it would take more than a year at the time. I think across the board, more and more departments have streamlined the process where, for our end, we are doing our best to get it in 6 to 9 months. We're trying to turn it around to where we're looking at different ways to streamline the process. And I would probably say that's happening across the board with most departments now. The days of waiting a year, 2 to 2 years, 18 months, I think those days are gone. So for those who, you know, feel flustered or would have been flustered by the time frame, like myself early on when I first started applying, I would say those days are gone. And so, again, as Lieutenant mentioned, just about every department right now is hiring, and there's a ton of vacancies across the board. And so as much as at any point that I can recall, you guys are coming in at a right time, at a great time to attain your AA degrees and then begin applying for the various departments that you have identified.
Thank you. I know I saw a hand up right there, yeah. The woman with the striped shirt and that's about to stand up, yeah.
My question was actually, my question was,
She was had her head up.
That's okay, that's okay.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, go ahead. I'll wait, go ahead.
okay, the question was, for a person that is older and already have done the business administration, not the police not your class, can that person still get into being a counselor or something like that for the young?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Okay, can I become a counselor for the young adults in trouble, even though I don't have the criminal administration, but just regular administration class?
There's other fields that you can major in. It does not have to be specifically for criminal justice or administration of justice.
Answer my question.
So we prefer that there are, if you're not taking that particular course of
Have a
coursework,
certain type of degree.
preferably then a behavioral science would do.
Okay.
Thanks.
I think the question has been answered. 'Cause I was wanting to know about what kind of degrees are you supposed to have in order to pursue this line of work?
There's a variety of degrees now that our departments look for. Obviously, we look for criminal justice or administration of, or sociology. We also look very closely at whether or not you're familiar with behavioral health. And many of those areas are now partnering with probation, sheriff, California Highway Patrol. Probation works with behavioral health care on a regular and consistent basis, as well as social services. So our departments have aligned themselves to work together. And then the courts. And to you, young lady, yes, we're looking for people in a variety of ways to serve. When I mentioned the management analysts, we have management analysts, which we didn't have when I started, that come in and help identify where our departments need to invest more in what we call outcomes, measurable outcomes. We're a risk needs assessment, tool-driven, evidence-based department now, set of departments. And I shared all those words to say that wasn't what we did initially. We just came in and we worked together and we had anecdotal information to support us. Now we have to have measurable data. So those of you who have high technology skills, we need you. There's areas in the department and in the profession that just do not, we don't represent it all. That's what I want to say.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on that. Having a diversity in education and experience and culture is wonderful. And coming in with, if you come in with sociology or even an education background, even though you're going to be an educator on the street. You could be an educator inside of the PD or inside of your various agencies. So having a diverse set of skills and education is wonderful, and we look for that.
Thanks. Other questions? Are you going to?
What would be the role you mentioned forestry. What would be the role in that?
Well, now, are you familiar with the Department of Forestry and how they're set up?
No, not
Okay.
really.
So that's going to be a state level, and you're looking at positions very much like the lieutenant. There are actually assigned rangers and officers and people who make decisions about how things are protected, how service is delivered for a variety. We have all of these wonderful, we're in a beautiful area with all of these wonderful parks and settings. Somebody's got to govern all of that. Somebody's got to manage all of that. And it's got to be in line with all of the environmental advocacy and what our structure is around the state. So when we were on fire a few years ago, that's who was working very, very closely with everyone. And if we didn't say it in a way that came across, all of our departments believe in mutual aid. We have probably all served during a period of time in our respective capacities when our services were needed and command posts were set up, and we had to act in an emergency situation across the board. And so that's true for us, even at those levels, even in areas where you don't hear about opportunities. to grow in. And if we didn't mention forensic, that's another field. For those of you who may be interested, we work very closely these days. And there's a program at DVC that works with teaching you about the basics of forensics.
Okay.
There's one right there.
Do I take another question?
She's sort of hiding.
We'll have some,
Okay.
we'll have some good time for questions afterwards. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll probably have to save them at this point, just to,
Yeah. So I want to extend a sincere thank you to the panelists for taking time to share all these insights with our students. And I want to thank all of the students for attending and contributing to the conversation, both here in person and virtually. If you have questions, you can contact John Sanford, connect with him, or the professor here, or you can look at online the Administration of Justice website, or come see a counselor if you would like some help. And also you can register for the Adjust 120 class, which is the intro class. And that'll help you gain some more insight. And now I'd like to turn things over to Mariah Bruce to share more career preparation resources with you.
Thank you.
Okay. So I just want to extend a thank you again to our wonderful panelists and our facilitator, Julie, for taking their time and sharing their expertise. I am not Catherine Fonseca. She is the Career Services queen, and she happens to be out sick today. So we're having a little bit of shift in the programming that was supposed to happen at the end. I know you all were looking forward to a wonderful resume workshop, but I'm just going to share some things about career services, help you be able to get connected and still get those resources, and then we'll wrap up with the gift cards that we committed to for you all. So, the career services. So for those of you who aren't aware, just a little overview, these are some of the things that career services support. So you heard today about all the need to be prepared when you're going into these opportunities. Law enforcement is different, even as making sure you keep track of your social media. But no matter what kind of position you're going into, you're going to want your resume to be up to date, be ready to interview, get connected to opportunities, and career services can help with all of that. If you didn't see when you came in, there are opportunities. If some things that you heard today kind of resonate with you and you're thinking you might want to be in a field that's related, our campus police actually dropped off applications for a police aide position that is open to students that are here on campus if you want to start getting some exposure. So you'll be able to pick one of those up on the way out if that's something that's of interest to you. So this is just the events that are still coming up that career services have. They have a boot camp where they're going to help with resumes, cover letters, interview skills, how to dress, all of the things all at once, the 25th through the 27th. And they have another event May 8th through the 11th as well. So keep an eye out for details on that. They are right upstairs across the way in the Student Administration Building. So if you haven't had a chance to visit and get some support in person, that's where they're located, and the hours are here. Just so you know, this entire PowerPoint, I'm sending it to you with my thank you email afterwards. So you will have all of this information. And they're very active on social media. If you're looking for internships, job fairs, any opportunities that are connected to growing your career, follow them on social media because they're always posting opportunities. And then I also wanted to share, I mentioned that I'll send an email afterwards. So not only will it have the PowerPoint connected, but there's also an opportunity to get an additional gift. So our students that attend and complete a survey, the first 5, I guarantee them their first choice of the items here, these thank you gifts, when they come and pick them up from Career Services. However, everyone who completes the survey so that we have the feedback that we need to improve these events for you and get an idea of what you're looking for, we'll have a thank you gift for you when you come by the Career Services office. I'm going to come back to this slide because this is where we're going to spend some time. There are appointments that are one-on-one. We're going to help you make appointments today so that we can give you the gift cards for the resume workshop that Catherine wasn't able to do at this time. I'll come back to this one. But again, the location and hours and service times of the Career Services Office are here. And again, I want to thank everyone. So now this concludes the event, but we are going to spend some time helping you through this process so that you can get your appointment set up and have the gift card that we promised you. Thank you again so much for all your time today.
Nice. Nice job.
I have some stuff to give out. If anyone wants lanyards or pens or hand sanitizer, I've got some stuff to give out. Feel free to come up here and say hi.
Anyone like a business card for probation?